the Stoics believe in giving people their own personal autonomy. They believe that you should always let people show you that they like you. You should always let people come to you. You should never suffocate people with your presence. That's one of the most important laws of Stoicism, is respect people's personal boundaries. And sometimes you don't know somebody's personal boundaries unless they show you how, through the restrictions they give you, but also through the...
Like a boss.
You see, one of the things that the Stoics always taught people is respect for autonomy, giving people respect of autonomy. That means giving people space. That means not crowding them. That means not touching them when they don't want to be touched. That means not talking to them when they don't want to be talked to. One of the most important things that they taught is sense the vibe in people. Give people more space than necessary. And so we're going to talk about why that's so important and why it always works. Why it always works to attract a man, to attract a woman, to attract a job even, right? And this is one of those things that a lot of people don't follow because it does create anxiety. It is uncomfortable giving people space, especially when you want to get an answer out of them. So let's talk about why. Well, first of all, let's just talk about when it comes to falling in love, right? Anybody falling in love with you, that don't have to be romantically. That means a friend who loves you, or even a job, right? Usually when they realize how much they appreciate you, it never happens in your presence. Because when you're talking to someone or even a partner and you looking at them eyeball to eyeball, you do feel emotions, right? But a part of you understands that sometimes those emotions just come in the moment. Sometimes those emotions are just adrenaline, and sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between feeling a genuine connection versus feeling the adrenaline. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference, right? Like telling the difference between certain foods, right? It's really hard. So, so the best way to tell is space. Why? Just like a crystal, right? Crystals become crystallized over time, right? Over time, little particles come together and form a crystal, right? Over time, the water in a cave that's mineral rich slowly evaporates and creates a crystal. But the crystal doesn't become crystallized instantly. It becomes crystallized part by part, little by little, right? And those parts by parts are little thoughts. And that only happens when you give people space, where all of a sudden they don't realize that they've been crystallizing an image of you, right? And then they realize one day they think of you, and then you pop up in their minds and they're like, oh my God, I love this person. But I could promise you, most people realize that they love you when they're not there. If you are constantly there, you're stopping the crystallization process. And that's why I always tell people in the beginning, when you're first talking to people, give them space. After a few months or weeks, or maybe after you know they love you, then you could start talking to them and being with them almost every day. But in the beginning, give them space so that they can start crystallizing you. The brain needs space so that they can start fantasizing. Because the way it works is that in the beginning, you like them, right? And then all of a sudden, they'll just flash in your mind while you're doing dishing. And you're like, the fuck? This person just came to my mind. And then all of a sudden, another day, another flash in your mind. Now this flash comes with an emotion. You're like, oh my God, that's crazy. And then maybe one day you think about something bad that could happen to them. Then all of a sudden you feel deep compassion. Boom. That's another crystal. That's another particle getting into this crystal without you even knowing it. One day you wake up and you're in love with them. But this only happens when you're not around. That's what you have to understand. That's the most important thing to understand. So that's the first thing. It creates the crystallization process so that people can actually love you and appreciate you. But that can never happen if you don't give them space. The next thing is that it allows you to show independence. One of the problems about falling in love is the sense of losing our our ability to control our emotions. You see, when we're in love, we can't control our emotions. And one of the things that the Stoics always teach is controlling your emotions and depending on yourself. So giving people space will cause them to realize, oh my God, this person is independent. This person doesn't need me. But at the same time, if you actually like them as people, they're all, when in your presence, they're gonna sense that they're gonna feel like they're the only ones in the world, and that's something that you could learn by practicing meditation. If you practice meditation, you learn to pay so much attention to what people are saying that they're gonna feel like they're the only ones in love in their life. You initially charm them with your full attention, and then once they're away, you live your life. You make them feel, which is the natural process of paying attention, like they were the most interesting person in the world. And what naturally, whatever you give to people, if they like you back and have some level of self-respect for you and respect for you, the law of reciprocation will come into play. You give them self-esteem and they'll give you back self-esteem. So when you're away and you give them the space, because people are going to say, okay, this person liked me, I was really charming, they're going to come to me, right? But it's their turn. You validated them. Now it's their time to validate you. It's only normal. Now they come to you. Now they text you. Now they want to see you. Now they want to hang out. They're the ones that do it, right? Why? Because you already took the initiative. When you were in person, you made them feel like they were the most interesting person in the world. But now it's their turn to make you feel that by them initiating some contact, initiating another meetup, initiating. Now it depends on the sexes, right? But generally speaking, you let them do that because nothing says you're an anxious mess than not being able to give people space. What that says is that I need you for my validation, and that's a burden that a lot of people don't like. And a lot of people resent. The Stoics believe in giving people their own personal autonomy. They believe that you should always let people show you that they like you. You should always let people come to you. You should never suffocate people with your presence. That's one of the most important laws of Stoicism, is respect people's personal boundaries. And sometimes you don't know somebody's personal boundaries unless they show you how, through the restrictions they give you, but also through the access that they give you. And the access is you only know the access that they're going to give you by letting them show you, by not asking for access, but by letting them give you the access. Now look, giving people space isn't just about giving people like physical space, right? But also during conversations, during text, in every aspect of life. Space isn't just a proximity space, but also in time. And also, that means when you're talking to them, give them space to talk. Let them be the most interesting person in the world, in your presence at least. Remember. And also, by you letting them talk, by you being more interested in what they have to say, it allows you to see red flags in people. They'll reveal red flags, right? You got to be willing to look out for it. Like if a girl says, yeah, I banged my friend's brother, or I banged my boyfriend's friends as revenge, that type of stuff. You're like, okay, this bitch is crazy, right? Like you get them to talk, get them to feel like they're the most interesting person, so that they could then reveal their trait. Why? Because the whole point of all of this is to always try to give people the impression that they are interested. If you guys don't understand this, it's really important for self-esteem, for people to feel like that the person who's listening to them values what they have to say. You have to give it. Once you do that, which is important, they'll feel the need to give back to you, and they'll validate you because you're validating them. Now, some people are a little harder to give that than others, right? And that's why you take a precautionary step and you give people more space than necessary after the meetup. But even when you talk to people, always give them more space to talk. Take a little bit, like when they're done talking, pause a little bit more before you respond. Maybe they have something else to say, right? Always say less than necessary, simply because it prevents you from making mistakes. The biggest mistakes in social interactions usually happen because people talk too much. Like in the mafia, I watch a lot of mafia movies, and usually one of the reasons why people die and get killed is because they talk too much. They may say a wrong joke at the wrong place at the wrong time. They might talk to the cops. It doesn't matter. The point is, a lot of their deaths come because of their mouths, people, not because of the actions, which is pretty insane, right? So that's one thing, right? Makes them. But another thing is that by you giving people space, it makes them want you more. For example, When you go to restaurants, a good restaurant will always give you small portions. I'm sorry, that's just how it works. Usually, the best restaurants give you give you small portions. The worst restaurants give you the largest portions. Like, and it's there's also a psychological effect that I notice that when I go to Italian restaurants, the ones that give me the big portions, I always leave more unsatisfied. But whenever they give me small portions, there's something about small portions that just feels right. And that's because it just feels more elegant, it feels higher value, and you actually enjoy the food more. And that's the same thing with yourself. Give people small portions of yourself at first. Don't give people too much portion. Don't let them get full with you. Don't let people get too full with your charm. Give them small portions of your presence and let that build up over time. Insecurity will always make people want to be around them all the time. And you might suffocate them. It's like the smell of weed. You want to be able to smell weed. But if you smoke weed every day, you might smoke and not be able to tell that there's weed in the air. But when you don't smoke often, you don't get desensitized to the smell of weed. So every time you smell it, it's going to be a strong hit. So it's the same thing with people. Don't let them make people know that you're there. And the way you let people know that you're there, and the way that you increase the power of your presence is through absence. It's through giving people the space that they need. And it's almost like, it's funny how usually the artists that when we love people the most and when we talk about people the most is when they're not there. We talked about Michael Jackson the most when he died, right? We talk about more about the people who are not here more than the people who are there. That's what gossip is, right? Absence, space always makes the brain gravitate towards it. It's a void, a mystery that people love thinking about. So that's one thing. It makes them want you more. And above all, it shows their willingness to fill in the gaps. If somebody really likes you as a person and they appreciate you, when by you being around them and validating them, by listening and letting them talk more than you talk. And mind you, when you let people talk more than you, they end up liking you more than you like them. It's just like, it's one of those weird tricks of human nature. By you then putting a ball in their corporate, because again, this is why I'm telling you to when you're around them, make them know that, hey, I like you as a person. You got to do that. You can't show that you don't like them. You can't be super cold in person, because then this won't work. You have to give off a warm, friendly vibe, and the way you develop that is by developing a meditation practice. People, I mean, I hate to bring that up again. A meditation practice will give you an aura of friendliness, warmth that gravitates people to you. Plain and simple. So right after that, it also then, when people know that you like them back, when you like them in real life and you're away, they're gonna try to give back to you. Like I said, validation and self-esteem. And so that means they're just gonna want to be around you. They're gonna chase you. They're gonna say, hey, you want to hang out? Hey, it was great meeting you, blah, 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 blah. And so then you reciprocate their initiation with your initiation next, right? And then all you guys are doing is matching each other's energy. You're just matching each other's energy. If they're pulling away, you pull away, right? If they're showing interest, you show interest. But always remember, in the beginning of any relationship, always give them more space. That's just how that works, right? Don't chase them too much. Don't see them too often at first. Let that build up over the months, over the weeks and months, because when you spend too much time with someone in the beginning, you might end up falling in love with the wrong person. You don't want that. You don't want to fall in love with the wrong person. So in order to keep your emotional independence from the person, to not get too emotionally invested in somebody who's not investing back, that's why you want to see them initially, not that much, once a week at first, and then you build up over the weeks. Maybe the next week, maybe in the next 2 weeks, you see them 2 times a week, and then you build it up. And also because you want to give them that space. Remember the crystallization process. You want to give them more moments of like random pop-ups where you pop up in their mind and you're like, oh wow, why am I thinking of them, right? And when they realize that you're coming up in your mind a lot of the times people just come to the conclusion that they actually like you or love you, and sometimes they end up falling in love with you. And if they're a friend, they might say, okay, I really like this friend of mine. I want to get to know them more, right? And this is something that I didn't do when I was younger. When I was younger, I would pursue too much. I would chase too much. And unfortunately, it made a lot of my relationships really difficult. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys ever want to work with me one-on-one, go to mindfulattraction.org. If you guys want to work on becoming more likable, purchase my course, Charisma Blueprint, by clicking on the description down below. And take care, and I see you guys later.